On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we're officially on milestone watch for the final few games of the season.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Zach Zeman joins us as we take a look at the final few games of the season with the April schedule. We'll also take a look at the Locked On Wild Player of the Month for March, and we'll look and see the likelihood that a few milestones get hit before the season is over. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, credentialed Wild media member, and recovering from the in the stands experience against the Ottawa Senators. We've got Zach Zeman joining us here today to talk about the April schedule. Zach, what's happening?
What's happening is you're undefeated when you're a fan. That's what's happening. So, and when you put me in the arena, though, it doesn't go right. So you need to take everyone's spot and just fill it so the Wild go undefeated, right? Is that what I'm hearing? Because whenever I go, the Wild lose, the Twins lose, the Vikings lose. It's terrible. Even the Timberwolves. So, yeah, if you can take my spot at every single sporting event I go to, I would love that because right now you're undefeated, and that's what I like.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to buy like 3 seats all like in a clump, and I'm just going to cover the games from the seats. Like bring my laptop down there, bring all the equipment and everything, and just that way we get the happy medium next year. 82-0 Stanley Cup champion, like Stanley Cup trophy. Like literally. just we'll just make that happen. No, that was fun. It was fun to kind of get that view of things. And so as I said in the postcast, I was not kidnapped. I was not held hostage. I was just in the passenger seat for the Sens postcast. We're going to do a few more of those next year and beyond. It's just fun to kind of get that perspective throughout the season. So had fun with it. And just looking forward at this point, Zach, let's be honest. The Wild were 7-3-3 in March. At this point, it's like a single-digit percentage chance of the postseason. We're basically at any given point, it could be even that by the time this is being heard by the listening audience, that phrase that we know is lurking that just hasn't hit yet, eliminated from playoff contention. It's like I keep checking the standings to just see one of the E's in front of the Minnesota Wild at some point. So unfortunately for the Wilds, that's just where we're at. But 7-3-3 for the month of March, 2.69 goals for per game, 2.31 goals against. Power play finished at 18.8%, penalty kill at 77. And you noted something, Zach, before we even hit record. If you're looking at kind of one of the things that stands out about that month of March, I think you hit it right on the head going winless against the St. Louis Blues. I don't feel great about that.
I mean, like, let's not even forget about the Avalanche loss and the Vegas loss. Like, these are all teams you're chasing, especially St. Louis and Vegas. And you really just can't come out with wins. Obviously, those are, some tough games. Don't get me wrong. But, I mean, those are the games of the year. The whole month of March episode we recorded was those 3 games. And, you can get shootout losses or whatever, overtime losses. But at the end of the day, you got to walk out of those games with 2 points. And that's clearly what didn't happen. It's just really frustrating that the teams who you need to beat the most, not the Coyotes, not the Sharks, you're losing to St. Louis and Vegas. And, that just kind of sums up the month of March. You say it's like 6-3-3 or 7, whatever the record was.
7-3-3.
7-3-3. On paper, that's really not that bad. But when you're losing to the teams that you lose to, like
Yeah.
St. Louis, it just separates your chances, diminishes your chances at making the playoffs. And, that's where we're at right now. It's just a weird scenario. Every day it's dwindling more, and, something could happen, but also looks like it's coming to an end.
Which is why we're going to take a fun approach to looking at the rest of the schedule, because obviously at this point now we're in what many refer to as playing out the string mode and just trying to get through the rest of the games. And so we'll talk about that, but we do have to anoint the Locked on Wild month of March. And you look at the stats, it's pretty clear cut in my mind, Zach. Kirill Kaprizov finished the month of March. He had 11 goals, 8 assists, 19 points in 13 games. He was the only Wild player to have double-digit goals for the month. Ryan Hartman was next closest with 4. Matt Boldy did have 12 points, 2 goals, and 10 assists in that span. But it feels like this one, if you want to go maybe one level below, Joel Eriksson Ek did play in 8 games and he had 7 points. But I mean, we've seen it from Kirill the last like 4 or 5 months, just on an absolute heater, and that certainly continued in March.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying Kaprizov is literally the only player on the ice, it feels like, for the Minnesota Wild. Much deserving of the player of the month for March from both of us, unanimous. It just felt like the bottom 6 are disappearing, and, Kirill is obviously just doing figure eights out there trying to get any momentum going. Big shout out, obviously all reliable. He's always going to do what he does, and it's always good to see that at least he's playing consistent. And, yeah, when you get a star player like that, promoted to like an alternate captain, it's always good to see. But the rest of the team, on the other hand, man, they're falling down.
Yeah, and you look at some of these numbers that are not great for the month of March, like you talked about. I mean, you've got single or no points from the following players. And I know with the Senators game, it was in April, though, so you can't count that in the March statistics, but like Jake Lucchini, 1 point in 13 games. Marcus Johansson, 1 point in 9 games. Marat Khusnutdinov, we're going to talk about in a little bit. He has 1 point in 7 games, but I'm not super worried about that. Declan Chisholm, 1 point in 13 games. Mason Shaw, 1 point in 13 games. Vinny Lettieri, no points in 10 games. And so you go even a little higher up the list. Marcus Foligno, 2 points in 8 games. Freddie Gaudreau, 3 points in 12 games. Adam Beckman, 2 points in 7 games. I feel like that would be more if he continued to get the opportunity that he got, for instance, against the Senators. But it's just beyond Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and Boldy. We've been talking about this for like a month. Beyond Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and Boldy, like, they're just where did everybody go?
Yeah, I mean, those stats right there are just abysmal. It's just really frustrating because, you could say that in the beginning of the month, like the beginning of the season, the team's just getting underway, like they're figuring everything out. No, this is March. Like, yeah, this is March. This is the month that mattered the most, obviously, this season. And when those numbers are like that and you're getting 1 point in 10 games or how many, it is so frustrating to see as both a fan, but also like management. Like, yeah, this is it. And no one's showing up. You had extremely crucial games that you're losing, and it's embarrassing, honestly. And you had a chance. Don't get me wrong, injuries are everywhere with this team. But when you get elevated because of those injuries, you got to make a mark, and clearly it didn't happen.
Yeah, it's tough because it feels like there are some guys that are just in too high, like being asked to do more than they're capable of. But then there are other guys where it feels like knock, knock, knock. Anybody home? Like anybody there? But Kirill, I mean, he had 49 shots for the month, and he shot 22.5% for the month.
Like what?
Insane. And he is getting close to some milestones. And so what we're going to do next is just look at the remaining games. We'll see, try to get a sense of the ones in which they're going to be close, in which the other team has, a real good foothold. We'll take a look at the remaining games of the season. We're also going to look at some milestones and some things that we hope to see by season's end as we put the finishing touches on our final monthly schedule preview of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. A reminder that thanks to our partners at SiriusXM, you can enjoy the Minnesota Wild through the SXM app. The Wild take on the Colorado Avalanche tonight, and so you can tune in and hear Joe O'Donnell and Tom Reed light things up through the SXM app. Make sure to tune in at 7 Central. Again, courtesy of our friends at SiriusXM. Zach, let's look at the schedule here for tonight and for the rest of the month, I mean. And I mentioned tonight, Wild take on the Avalanche. They already beat the Ottawa Senators on Tuesday night. And so let's just look at what we've got here the rest of the way. Colorado Avalanche tonight. Winnipeg on Saturday. And then at Chicago on Sunday the 7th. At Colorado on Tuesday the 9th. At Vegas on Friday the 12th. At San Jose on Saturday the 13th. At the LA Kings on Monday the 15th. And then home against Seattle on April 18th to finish off the regular season. Oh, great. We get another West Coast road trip to finish off the season. Zach, which games are you looking forward to watching the most here down the stretch?
Yeah, what I'm noticing right off the bat is a lot of these teams could easily be eliminated by the time the Wild do play them. So it's going to be a little interesting. I think these lineups are definitely going to be jumbled, if not completely, the same. Like it could literally go either way. What I'm looking at here is tonight's game. Tonight is huge. You really have two of your next 4 games against Colorado. That's the best. You really got to show up, and if you still want a chance, which you technically still have a chance of making the playoffs right now, you might as well go out and win those 2. It's absolutely crucial. I mean, we talked about how St. Louis was crucial. Now these are crucial because you put yourself in this spot where every game is a must win. And, when you play Colorado 2 of the next 4, it gets serious. And another thing is, you wrap up the homestand on Saturday, a 3-game homestand to begin the month of April, but then you go on that West Coast trip and it's just, 5 straight away games in about less than a week and a half. And then you come home and play Seattle. Like it's just a really weird schedule. Definitely, if the Wild were in playoff contention, battling for a seed, this would be insanely crucial. You really got to show up on the road, and clearly the March was tough for them on the road. I mean, just like I said, it's in my head is the St. Louis Blues games. Like you can't even show up in St. Louis. Now you put your spot yourself in a spot to go to the West, and you really got to show up in those games. Yeah, definitely those two against Colorado. Obviously, Vegas is huge, but Winnipeg really does travel well when they come to St. Paul. Those games always get physical. Obviously, there's a lot of history there, but no Moose for the rest of the season. So, the Wild really gotta find their physicality somewhere else. Does Hartman return? The math might get a little jumbled with me, but maybe that Winnipeg game he might come back.
So
no, I think
he did not play against Ottawa. So he would return for the Chicago game.
So he'll be on the road trip again. Yeah. Hartman, very, very physical player. No Foligno, no Hartman. Obviously, that's going to be a bummer. End out the homestand on that game. But these are crucial games. You're missing a lot of your good players. Let's see what the bottom six can do. Honestly, it hasn't looked pretty recently, but these are the games you must win. So something's got to be said.
Here's kind of my stock into the opponents that we'll see against the Wild here coming up. So the Avalanche are 3 points out for the number 1 overall seed in the West. And so I think they are going to bring it in those 2 games against the Wild, because if you're Colorado, you look at Minnesota as an opportunity to get 4 points easy. So they're going to bring it for those games. Winnipeg right now is 4 points back of Colorado for the 2 spot, and they have a 6-point lead over Nashville for the first wild card spot. So I think Winnipeg, and especially with the fact that Winnipeg has been in a bit of a tailspin themselves, I think they're going to take that. I think they'll approach that Wild game the same way. Like let's try, because for as much as the Wild have played themselves pretty much out of postseason contention, the fact that they're going to play a little slower game, they're going to play a little more physical game, it is a playoff tune-up for teams like the Avs and the Jets. So they'll be able to get a little bit of a playoff tune-up in those games. So I think those teams are they're gonna give it everything they've got. Chicago,
what's going on over there?
At this point, Chicago's a mess. Connor Bedard is the only thing that they have going for them. So he's gonna try to get like 90 points. So honestly, like the only objective that I really am hoping to accomplish in that Chicago game is to just shut down Bedard. Mm-hmm. I hate that I've gotten to that point, that the discourse has just been so annoying from Chicago fans that I am rooting for Bedard to not do well. Like, I hate that I'm at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting, like especially the Calder race too. It's always Faber and Bedard. And as a Wild guy, it's obviously easy to see Faber as the Calder winner, but man, Bedard, there's no denying it. Bedard's a great hockey player, and
he is.
Yeah, it's clear that they're in a good spot to get the lottery too. So I mean, the frustrations with the Chicago Blackhawks are definitely evident with a lot of NHL fans.
Vegas is in an interesting spot too, because the Golden Knights have a 5-point lead over the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings have a 3-point lead against the St. Louis Blues for that wild card 2 spot. So things starting to get a little tight there. Basically, the only games in which I don't see the opponents like playing it like they need it are Chicago, San Jose, and Seattle. Like, of the remaining 8 games, of the remaining 8, I see those 3 as mostly if you show up, you win. Beyond that, it's tough to say. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this one spicy. The over-under, and we can throw Ottawa in because it was a game that occurred in April that the Wild won. So of the final 9 games, I'm putting the over-under for Wild wins this month at 4.5.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at 3.5. I don't know. Well, to be fair, Winnipeg's playing like they don't want to win. So, and obviously it's what you said earlier. It's a bounce back game for them. It's a playoff tune-up. Yeah, 4.5 is definitely the line. I can see that. I was saying 3.5 because who knows where the Kings will be? Who knows? Obviously, well, Seattle is pretty much done. The Sharks are out. The Blackhawks are out. So, but knowing the Wild are probably going to drop one of those, it just feels like that, to round out the season. But it's just unfortunate the Wild are in this scenario where it's like, yeah, you really got to win out and hope Vegas goes 500 and then the rest is history.
Vegas has to win like one game.
Yeah, it's
for this to happen. And the reason I picked 4.5 is because if you beat the teams that are below you in the standings, you get to 4. But like you just said, that's assuming that you beat Chicago, San Jose, and Seattle, which, if we have been paying attention at all this season, is not a guarantee. And so if we're going 4.5, I think I'm taking the under for wins here for April. I think 4 is a safe play. Could see 3. If we end up with like 1, that's going to extremely help the tankathon, but I don't see it. Like, as much as people want there to just be, call off the dogs, we'll see some younger players get opportunities here, I'm sure, but the Wild are still going to try to win these games because it's just like, that's just how it works at any level of sport. We saw the Vikings do that in a game that a lot of people are saying just lose it and improve your draft position. Like, people are playing for future contracts. John Hines is coaching for whatever job comes after this Minnesota Wild job. Like, everybody is playing for future jobs after this season. And so, like, I'm going to say under 4. I'm going to say under 4.5. I feel like 4 is what we end up with for wins, though.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of these games could get ugly quick. I mean, we've seen it, especially in March. I think it was obviously against Los Angeles Kings. Like, you get shut out and lose 6-0. Like, there are games like that. And when you go into Ball Arena or T-Mobile Arena, those are obviously teams who need to fight for a spot, a better seed. And, if the Wild lock in as prey, then so be it. I mean, it's just a tough situation. But hey, you never know what can happen. Am I right? Yeah. That's just who I am. That's just me. I'm an optimistic guy.
You are very much, and that's why I think this works so well, is because you are glass half full all the time. I dropped my glass on the floor and I'm trying to pick up the shards. And so I would then be half empty in that case, but it's the good yin and yang.
I will say just one last thing. It's really going to be cool to see, these prospects really get that time. There's always, like, obviously these games still matter. Like, a lot of these teams the Wild are about to play are going to see some good prospects. And I think, the Wild do have some really fun characters and some players. It's going to be really cool. I mean, obviously, Khusnutdinov, you got Beckman there too. Everyone's getting their shot here. And, coming to the end of the season, once you're officially eliminated, which could happen pretty quick here, it's going to be, it's not like I'm not going to not watch it. Like, I'll be watching all these games.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see the prospects develop for sure.
We're going to talk a little bit more because there's potential for some milestones here the rest of the season. And so to finish out, we'll look at the likelihood that we see a few particular milestones. Kirill is chasing one. Matt Boldy is chasing one. We'll talk about those rookies as well. As we throw you a tantalizing what should you be watching for to finish out the season as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is also brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC is a registered broker-dealer. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you join our Discord server to get a little more day-to-day conversation, game day chats as well. Link is in the description to be able to join our rapidly growing Locked on Wild Discord server. Also, make sure to join us for tonight's Locked on Wild postcast after the game against Colorado this evening. And we will be having a live stream for you. In addition to our standard Sunday show at noon, we'll have a live stream for you of Wild at Blackhawks starting at 2:30. So a full day on Sunday for you. Make sure to join us. Should be a lot of fun. It always is. But just make sure that you spend your Sunday with us as the Wild take on Chicago. Zach, I wanted to just finish with a couple of milestone watches for the rest of the season, and we'll talk about the likelihood that those milestones are achieved. The first being Kirill Kaprizov. He is he's 3 goals away. Math is evidently not a strong suit of mine. He's at 37 goals right now. He is 3 points and 4 assists away from getting to a 40-goal, 50-assist season, in which he also has the opportunity to get to 90 points. How confident are you that Kaprizov, with 8 games to play, how confident are you that Kaprizov gets to all of these marks by the time the season is done? Do you think he'll get 40 goals? Do you think he'll only get 50 assists? Do you think he gets all 3 of these, or do you think he gets maybe 1 or 2 of these milestones?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a chance. If I'm being honest, I don't want to come on here and be like, no, there's no way. But it feels like their line's the only one that's playing. So, yep. It's just, hey, shout out March Player of the Month. I'm obviously gonna watch that, and I really want him to score. Honestly, it just feels like he's the only guy on this team that's capable of hitting milestones, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously I think he's got what it takes. There's a lot of games left. Yeah, I mean, hey, 90-point season, what more could you ask for with a team who is probably not going to make the playoffs? I mean, at least there's that to see. The future of Kirill is evident. And I'm just, it's good to see him still succeeding regardless of where the Wild are right now and nobody else playing around him.
The crazy thing, too, is I think if Kaprizov plays 82 games this year, I think he gets to 100 points, which is just insane considering where he started the season.
True.
But we all know the reason for that. Was injured, spent the entire offseason trying to heal from that injury, and thus had to kind of build his stamina and his strength back up as the season was going. And once he did that, just took off and has gone to a completely different stratosphere. So I think he hits both. I think he gets to 40. I think he gets to 50 assists. I think he gets to the 90 points. And we'll look back, and I did an episode on this about a month and a half ago. We'll look back to this and it's a shame that it came in a season in which it didn't end up being a postseason season. But we'll look back at this as some of Kaprizov's best work, as a Wild player. Just the number of games that he has carried this team through just an almost total lack of secondary scoring has just been insane. So I think Kaprizov gets to all of those marks, the 40 goals, the 50 assists, the 90 plus points. I think he hits all of them. Now, here's an interesting one. Matt Boldy is 4 goals away from 30. He is currently, according to ESPN, he's currently projected for 29 and 38 assists, projected for 66 points. He has 60 right now in 67 games. So, Zach, let's go with the big one, because it's very possible he could get 6 more assists in these final 8 games as well. Do you think Matt Boldy gets to 30 goals for the second straight season between now and the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, what you're telling me is he needs 6 points in 8 games, I believe. And I think Boldy's been one of those guys who's, obviously also reliable. I think, obviously there's like 1 or 2 plays per game that just is like, okay, whatever. But yeah, Matt he's got a fire. Like, I think he's like one of the best players on this team, if I'm being honest. Like, regardless of stats, Matt Boldy's always there. Like, his contract is unbelievable moving forward. This is a guy extremely reliable. I mean, obviously you saw him snipe one on Tuesday. Like, yeah. I mean, obviously he's elite, and I really am looking forward to him. I just really do love watching these players, develop in the Minnesota Wild jersey, and I think Boldy is one that's definitely going to age well. I mean, I'll just reiterate that contract. It's like $6 million for a long time, and I think he is underpaid, and in a good way, because the Wild do need it. Going back to your question, I'm obviously on board with it. I think 6 points in 8 games. Obviously, you have like three against, you got 2 against Colorado, 1 against Vegas. Obviously, those are tough games. But yeah, hey, he's got it. He's got it.
Hot take. Matt Boldy's going to get to 70 points. He's going to get the 4 goals. He's also going to get the 6 assists, because he's been on a little bit. If you look at his recent game log here, he, in the month of March, had 2 goals, 10 assists. I think we see him go on a little bit of a goal run to finish off the season. He already got 1 against the Sens. I think we see him go on a goal run to finish the year, and I think he ends up being a 30-goal, 70-point guy. And so, again, I will reiterate, and this is something that I have to tell myself too. He's 22 years old.
Insane.
Would we like to see a little more even performance, like spread out throughout the year as opposed to kind of hot and cold? Sure. But he's 22 years old, and if he hits 4 more goals, he's got back-to-back 30-goal seasons as a 21 and a 22-year-old. And the fact that we feel like he can give more is a good thing, because that means that he has more to add to. Like, it'd be one thing if you have a young player like this that kind of hits and like peaks. I think the fan base feels like there's a lot more that he can offer, like a lot more that he can bring to the table. And so for him, it's just going to be continuing to add little pieces to his game as his career unfolds. But like 30 goals in back-to-back seasons as 21 and 22-year-old is pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, you sign him right away at that value too. It's unreal. I mean, he's, like I said, it's an interesting point at the end of the season where, he's looking to get goals, and I think we're all rooting for him to score. But yeah, I mean, even if it doesn't happen, like obviously this year went south, don't even get me wrong. But it's still so good to see a young guy like him, and what you just said is getting those goals. I mean, what more could you ask for with a team who literally doesn't have a bottom 6 currently? So there's nothing to get frustrated about with his play at all. I'm a huge fan of Matt Boldy. Definitely got a lot more years in this league, and just to see him already hitting these milestones as a young guy, literally my age, like it's insane. Big Boldy guy.
Yeah. And, the other goal milestone that we'll talk about just briefly, Ryan Hartman needs 1 more goal to get to 20. That's really the only other player that is in milestone territory. I mean, if Faber gets 3 more goals by the end of the season, he'll get to 10. Rossi's at 20 goals right now. So there's some nice even numbers from a goals perspective. I did want to finish by talking about, well, I guess there's one more. Marc-Andre Fleury needs 1 more win to get to 20. Or no, he needs 3 more wins to get to 20. Philip Gustafson needs 1 more win to get to 20 himself. But I want to talk about Marat, Khusnutdinov, and Adam Beckman. What do you think the odds are that we see either one or both, Beckman, Khusnutdinov? What do you think the odds are we see one or both of them record their first career NHL goal by the time the season's done?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, it's going to be really, really frustrating if that doesn't happen. Just, they have a whole month to do it, and they've been on this team for especially Khusnutdinov. I mean, he's been getting ice time and enough ice time rather, to make a difference. He's, like you said yesterday, he's throwing the body, he's getting involved. But I will say it is really, really easy to hate on these players early. It's like, oh, I'm not seeing, what the heck was projected of this guy. Even if the goals don't happen, it's frustrating, but it's also so easy to be frustrated, if that makes sense. Obviously these guys are just finding their motions in this lineup, and you really can't expect much. I think we said that when we were projecting the March schedule. It's obviously hard. It's obviously a hard league. It's different up here. It's obviously when we get to see these guys in the lineup, it's amazing. And, obviously I'm rooting for one of them to get their goal. And hey, at least we're like in a spot where we get to see the prospects. I think it is a really cool and interesting point of the season where these guys are starting to make a difference. Beckman looks really good to me. Man, he's getting those good shots when you need him the most. The Wild really didn't throw a lot on net on Tuesday night, and Beckman was there to get a couple. And I guess that's really all you could ask for. But yeah, hey, if I'm predicting, I think one of those trickles past the goalie here in this month of April.
I like it. The final one, I just saw this on Twitter. Perfect timing from Scott Dawson, asking if 1,000 penalty minutes is a possibility for the Wild this season. They are 106 short right now, which if you divide that out over 8 games, that's like 13 per game, which would be roughly 6 penalties per game on that pace. Now, the fact that you play Winnipeg, Colorado, and Vegas in that span, there's possibility you get a bunch of majors and you get it. And so this is just the masochist I am. That is what I'm going to be tracking the rest of the season is 1,000 team penalty minutes, and to see if the Wild get there, because I think they got a shot at 1K PIMS, which is just an insane number.
What?
Yeah. So we'll see there, but I'm gonna manifest it.
Too bad for you. Hartman is still suspended for 2 more of those. So there, it just gets even more hard. I feel like Hartman gets a penalty every single game, and it always comes at the worst time. But here we are.
I think they'll get to 1,000 PIMS, and I'm going to say Marat Khusnutdinov will score his first career NHL goal before the season is done, and Adam Beckman will assist on it. How about that?
Oh, that would be unreal.
How's that for a call?
One last bow on the season, wrap it up,
yeah,
tie it.
Be a perfect way to keep an eye on the future. So we will keep an eye on all of this, of course. Like I said, at this point, we're basically just playing out the string. So we'll see how these final few games go, and of course, we'll have you covered as the rest of the season plays out. So make sure to follow along with Locked On Wild down the stretch as we guide you through the final few games of the season. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe on either your favorite audio platforms or on YouTube so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.